The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. It is yet another edition of The Big Issue. And of course, as usual, I am here in the studio with my in-house analysts. We have Chibuzo Kaibe and Tunde Oguntola.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, the big issue of the day is Anambra Governorship poll and rising insecurity in the southeast. As usual, I am your regular host, George Agba is my name. And without taking much of your time, let's actually go into the big issue of the day. Despite fresh threats by the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, to disrupt the November 6th governorship election in Anambra State, the Independent National Electoral Commission said it would proceed with the election. The commission said it will move into the state by next week for the final lap of preparations for the election. And of course, corroborating the position of the electoral umpire, the National Security Advisor, NSA, Major General Baba Gana Munguno, retired, confirmed this when he warned that nobody or group should test the resolve and the will of the federal government to guarantee the November 16 gubernatorial election in Anambra State. The NSA spoke at the Intersecurity Agency's meeting for the election, where the INEC chairman too was present. And of course, capping all this up, the federal government had also hinted that it would declare a state of emergency in the state if that is what it takes for elections to hold in that state. Well, Chibuzo, Anambra State is a case in point. This is a state where they have said that during the campaigns, the governorship candidates were campaigning dodging bullets. And at the end of the day, the federal government and INEC is insisting the election must go on. Is this a very good development? Because in 2015, when it seemed as if the country was not safe or secured for elections, former President Goodluck Jonathan postponed the elections to be ensured that everywhere is safe security-wise. The federal government seems to be adamant to conduct election in Anambra State, despite the insecurity situation and the threat by IPOB. What do you think, Chibuzo?
Well, the federal government has stated its position. It has to talk from its position of strength. Obviously, the information they have at their disposal is much more than what we have. So if the NSA says they have all it takes to go ahead with the elections, one can only expect that they would have done their own work and they would have processed and analyzed the situation on the ground to have insisted that they are going to go ahead with it. That is one. Two, the thinking is that nobody would want to buckle to the threat of a group who wants to test the might of the federal government. And so at that level, the ego or there's a testing of the federal might here. So the federal government would naturally want to put its feet on the ground and pass a message, not just to IPOB, but to other groups across the country that nobody can test the federal might and get away with it. So the federal government buckles at this threat posed by IPOB with regards to the elections, and it becomes a problem, not just for the region, but for other parts of the country. Because other groups can now go ahead and if these guys succeed by making the federal government buckle on this one, it means we can also test and try our luck at this. So it's really a trying period for the country. I personally think all of this drama is coming, are things that were anticipated, and that it's unfortunate that it does appear as if all that needed to be done to ensure that we don't get to this point where we now have to, create a sense of who the people should trust, whether IPOB or the federal government, has really come to the fore at this point. Because if you have to look at it too, some people ask you, why is it that people tend, or the people on the ground tend to, even when state government says don't come out, don't heed to the sit at home orders of IPOB, the people still tend to heed to that. So these are some of the factors and some of the issues that would be interesting to look out for. Because already the prospects of apathy. Yeah. So beyond the federal government trying to stamp its feet and ensure that it doesn't buckle to the threat of, there is also the need for them to ensure that elections are conducted peacefully, because it is their responsibility to ensure that elections are conducted peacefully, elections are conducted with a good number of people participating in the process, and that they can ensure the sanctity of the process. So, in the absence of these, whatever happens on that day becomes, for some people, they'll say, we foretold you, and it has come to pass.
Yes, thank you very much. Because that is what me I was going to ask. If you say a certain group should not test the will and the resolve of the government, then there is that tendency that the government ought to put everything in place to make sure that the lives of people, properties are secured. Because that is what it swore to an oath to do, the protection of lives and property. So now, with the federal government insisting that the elections must go on despite such threat, and INEC insisting to, how do they intend to protect the lives of the citizens in that place if it now turns out blood that the group, because Adama is ready to face the federal government squarely? What do you think?
Thank you very much, George. I would like to say that in every election in Nigeria, there's always tension before the election. Two governorship elections before now was held. Even amidst tension, there were two elections. They were like, okay, there will be killings. The election will not be free and fair. But it came and passed, and the election went successfully. And even international community also lauded the election, that it was a good one from the nation electoral umpire. However, the issue of Anambra seems to be a very different one, because I can deeply recall that during the Edo and Ondo election, what was in town was issue of votes buying, votes trading, the need for the election to be peaceful, the need for politicians to embrace peace and eschew violence during the election. But when it comes to Anambra election, there have been killings in the town. We see how unknown government has always called attack government properties. We've seen how they burned, they attack DSS office there in Inewi, FRC office there, as well as other police station and outposts. For now, it's even very difficult for police to say in their outposts from information I gathered. But the INEC had earlier before now raised an alarm that this election might not hold. But with the renewed confidence from INEC that the election will hold, it's not surprising that I think they've had the assurance of security agency, and I think they have superior powers. I think they've gauged what IPOB can do, and they believe that this election will hold without rancor, as NSA boss Babagana Mungono said yesterday. However, one thing we must know that election first should not be do or die affair. The citizen should first know this. However, we understand there are some set of people who are bent on disrupting these polls. Then what should be done? The police has assured that they will send over 20,000 policemen And in fact, the spokesperson of Nigeria Police Force even mentioned the tactics that they want to use. They said they use both inner and outer rings. Say the inner rings will be those who will be at the polling booth, that they might even be without guns, while the outer rings will be on the streets with guns fully guarded to ensure that the election goes as planned and that it's not being disrupted by gunmen. So I think the security agency should beef up on this, and so they should also know that everybody, there's an eye on them. Already Nigerians are adopting them, they're adopting their fairness during the election, because they tend to, their beliefs that security agencies in the country always support the government of the day during election. So this is another test for security agency to ensure that they get that confidence from Nigerians. So for the politicians, I would say they should shun vote buying, vote trading, and ensure that they do this election in line with global best practices.
Well, thank you, Tunde. The federal government said it has, not the INEC. INEC said it has taken care of 12 out of the 14. What are those 12 items INEC is claiming to have taken care of?
Well, these are just, it includes the names of political parties, the timeline for sending names for their primaries, as well as campaign, placing of notice in the state offices and others. Well, the last two, according to INEC, which they said yesterday, include the need for them to halt campaign 24 hours before the election. I believe INEC is fully prepared for this, as well as they've ensured that I think they've said they've moved some items already positioned in Anambra State ahead of this election. So INEC have done this, and they are assuring us that this election will hold without rancor. So let's trust them on this.
Well, the people of Anambra State are afraid that if election hold, it might put their life at risk. INEC say it has taken care of 12 out of 14 items. How will that guarantee insecurity for citizens in the state during the governorship election? That is what we will actually be looking at as we come back from the short break. But before we go, we'll urge you, viewer, to contribute by shaping the conversation of the big issue through your comments. And we hope that by the time we come back from this short break, your comments will be trickling in. We'll be back in a moment.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
You're welcome back. We are still on the big issue in Leadership Podcast. And of course, the big issue of the day is Anambra governorship poll and the rising insecurity in the southeast. Of course, most of the political parties, the major political parties in the state, save for the ruling party, ABGA, have raised the alarm over growing insecurity in the region. Chibuzo, the candidate of APC and the People's Democratic Party, and their political parties have complained bitterly. They say the impact of insecurity in their campaigns ahead of the crucial election had affected them greatly. And you remember our leadership Sunday had a report that the governorship candidates were campaigning and dodging bullets in the state. If that is something that should worry the federal government. By now, they would have moved into the state, make sure that they look at the security situation critically, then address this issue of the threat by IPOB before the election continues. This is an election, normally elections where there's no external force, a force outside the election threatening to cause mayhem. Naturally, it is always very tough. Now we have particular people who say they are fighting a cause, especially with their leader, Nnamdi Kanu, in the DSS custody. Are we still going to say this election should go on despite all the security situation? Is that it?
I don't have as much information as they have to take a contrary position on why the election shouldn't go on. It's absolutely not in my power to make such, or anybody's power to make such kind of, declaration. The only person, or the only body, or the only institution that has that kind of authority to determine whether or not the elections will go on or not even the security operatives or the security institution, the only body that has the responsibility of making such a declaration is INEC. And if INEC has said we are going ahead with this, regardless of the challenges that are there, then one can only expect that they would have done all of the analysis, would have looked at this issue from all of the perspectives, gotten the buy-in of another critical stakeholder, which is the military. But let me not use the military, the security agencies. So at that level, if these institutions have said we have the green light to go ahead, we give the green light for this process to continue, then fine and good. But like I said earlier, one would know that they probably would bear in mind that it is not just enough for an election to go as a process of saying we said an election is going to hold and we are holding it. It's not enough for elections to just hold. What Nigerians would expect is that the elections hold regardless of the peculiar situation, that the elections that will hold retain the ingredients of proper election, which is fairness, credibility, transparency. So regardless of the security concerns that they are going to face, these very cardinal issues that would ensure the integrity of the process will remain very focal and very vital. I say this because it will not be enough to just say, oh, elections held regardless. But what is the quality of the elections? That would be a bigger challenge for all of the stakeholders. Now, that is on the one hand. On the other hand is one would want to wonder whether the people, the electorates on the ground, the voters, have been sensitized enough to want to trust the constituted authority to come out and participate in this process. I say this because over time, and I think I hinted at it earlier, over time we've seen a situation where state governments will give this organization will give this group rather will give some form of directive, and when a counter directive comes from the state government, it will seem as if the people heed more towards what the group is saying other than the state government.
That is even why I told
So
you that
it
it's
is
not
really
something you
worrying.
take lightly.
It is actually worrying if these scenarios continues to play out.
Thank you very much.
Now, the concept of whether the people are doing it willingly or not shouldn't exist in the first place, because where they should draw strength from is the state institution. People say that the people are heeding to the directive of this group out of fear. That narrative in itself reflects the failure of the system, the failure of government. Could it be that people have surrendered to the directive of this group because they do not trust the state institutions to protect them when they do come out? And I think these are very critical issues.
And that is what you should
What
even look at.
would have changed between now and the build up to the elections that will guarantee that people will want to come out and dare this group to say, we are going to participate in this process, we are going to fulfill our civic responsibility because the state institutions can protect us. What clear thing has the government done in that regard? It's not enough to throw up security apparatus, security personnel everywhere. There has to be a consciousness, a deliberate messaging, a deliberate sensitization that would show and make people believe that if we do come out, we are going to be protected. Or let us come out and do this because we are much more involved in this whole process. So these are the critical things one would really worry about, because more so over time, because of the failure of governance, there's the sense of at the risk of making a blunt statement, there's a sense of despondency about the quality of governance. And so it behoves on state institutions to begin to rebuild that sense of people taking responsibility for the kind of government they want to see. So it requires much more than just saying we are ready for this election and we are going to go ahead with it. What are the things on ground to really convince the people in those states that if you do come out, no harm is going to come to you? We are going to ensure that you are protected. I think those are the critical things that we want to see.
Thank you very much, Chigozo. And that is the issue we are talking about here. Today, you see what Chigozo has brought here.
But let me say this.
Okay.
It is not impossible for government to do that. I am not saying this from a point of it's almost like a hopeless case. No. It is still possible, very, very possible, for government to do all of these. And I think that is the perspective from which government should be looking at this whole scenario. It is much more than just putting boots on the ground, but a sensitization, a strong sensitization, because it starts from the people owning the process. If people own the process and come out, the narrative changes. But I am yet to see, much of that. A sufficient amount of that kind of process in this whole.
There is that slim chance that people will even own up to the process, because these are the same people they say they are sitting at home because of fear. Just like you rightly say, what is the guarantee that during the Anambra State election, that same fear will not stop the people from coming out? And at the end of the day, you know what it means. At the end, if people don't come out to vote, the next thing INEC will tell you is voter apathy. And at the end, for the fact that the people obey IPOB's directive, sit at home, whether it is out of fear or it is out of solidarity with what they are standing for, it is still a clear indication that something is not right. The idea here is that looking at the issue, in a region where at the end of the day, the killings is not about Anambra, it's the whole Southeast. But the killing in the Southeast is not because of Anambra election. The idea is that something is wrong. And that thing has to be addressed for a free and fair election to hold in that state. Look at the candidates who came out complaining, that of even the APC and the PDP. And look, we have been doing our campaigns and we are not saying most of the insecurity situation has disrupted our campaign, and we have been campaigning, sometimes dodging bullets. At the end of the day, an electoral umpire will say, no, that election will still go ahead despite everything. And then you now premise it on the fact that the National Security Advisor and then the federal government is just merely warning the people, giving the threat that don't test our mind. And I hope you see the picture of the situation.
Well, first, if I don't think anybody can answer clearly the reason for the renewed anarchy in Southeast. Nobody can say, okay, this is the reason why there are killings in the Southeast. However, this killing is also peculiar in all regions of the country. There's no part of this country that's 100% safe and secure. But narrowing it down to the Southeast and Anambra in particular, we get to understand that there tends to be a situation where the people from the Southeast feel not being carried along in the Nigerian project. There's a renewed call by them to, okay, we want this. We also want to be president. Zone the president to the Southeast, while not ignoring the call for Biafra. Although the Southeast governor has said they are in for Nigeria to make Nigeria work as a Nigeria project. But these people who are in solidarity with the IPOB are insisting that they need this true balance. So this called for not just sensitization, but a need for deep dialogue. This called for a rethink of the ongoing trial of Nnamdi Kanu. Maybe they should continue the trial or settle this out of court. This is possible. The government can do this. However, for the election in Anambra to hold, the onus now lies with INEC to ensure a free, fair, and credible election, while for the security agency to ensure that nobody is being killed. Life is golden. All this should be put in place. However, I can recall that the INEC chairman, Professor Yakubu, said, should we lose any vital material before this election, it will truncate the Anambra election. So this is also a message for the security agents to ensure that INEC properties in Anambra, electoral materials, electoral offices are well secured. And I would also like to call on the INEC and the NOA, National Registration Agency, to begin to sensitize Nigerians on the need to ensure peace, the need for them to halt violence, so that we can have a one united Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Tunde. Well, you've just said all these things. Apart even when it has to talk of INEC's materials for the election being secured and the rest, all these things, you will agree with me that there is no guarantee, because the political firmament in Anambra State is tensed. And even political parties have warned that this place is not safe. And yet the federal government is insisting. But just like Chibuzo said, let's hope that since the federal government is privy to intelligence information that me and you don't have, it's expected that maybe they have reasons why they insist that it is. But if they insist that the election must proceed, or if it is just out of mere threat that they are telling IPOB, don't test our will, then there's danger. because the lives and property in that state is not secure. So I think the idea here, the narrative here is that the federal government should not just stay and warn INEC and then feel that the election should proceed. I think there should be security measures enough to be sure that people are safe in that state, and those who come out to vote will do so peacefully without being attacked by a group that does not even believe that elections should go in that state. People are mad.
Well, I think you summed it up fantastically. There's no other way to guarantee that the elections will meet the requirements. Of course, nobody expects perfect elections, even in the normal circumstance. This is an unconventional circumstance, security-wise. There's a peculiarity to the nature of security that affects that they have to deal with in this election. However, one would expect too that the security agencies will step up to the plate. This is not a new phenomenon. It's been there for a long time. Manifestations have been played out in a couple of states in the region. So one would have expected that they have a blueprint on how to engage or ensure the conduct of elections in that kind of circumstance. And we want to see that happen. But I don't have that information, and I don't know. I can only assume that they have something like that in place. But where I can speak to is the quality of engagement they have with the civil populace, the electorate, and how they are going to. Because it's not enough to do your practice behind the scenes. You have to transfer that confidence to the people and make them know that we are actually ready for this. And we are not just saying we are ready for this. This is how we want to go about it. There has to be constant communication and proper sensitization. Make the people feel a part of the process. Because if you alienate them so much, then it's a case of, okay, they say they're going to do it, but don't know how they're going to do it. So why should we risk myself? Do I have to gamble it? I don't have to gamble it. I have to be sure that when I come out, I can be sure that I'll be protected. That's the only way I can come out. There are reports in some papers, was it yesterday or some days back, that a good number of ad hoc staff, withdrew from the whole process. I don't know the validity of that report, even though I saw it in some mainstream papers. The INEC has not really given any, much comment on that. So it's neither here nor there.
Observers.
Exactly.
Safety of observers.
Exactly.
What about the media?
Exactly. So these are fundamentals. If there is no clear, of course, they're going to say, oh, you are protected. But if there's no clear idea on how all of these stakeholders will protect the how do I put it now? The non-security stakeholders will be protected. How are they going to engage the police? How are they going to move around? How are they going to observe what actually the goings on within the place? So I think there's a lot more communicating that INEC and all of the other stakeholders need to do about this whole process. It's not enough to dare the group saying we are not going to do it. The same energy with which they are daring the group that we are going to go ahead with this election, that same energy should be also channeled in assuring the people that come out. We are going to ensure that you are protected. Yeah. In fact, I think the communication should be more towards the people than the group. Because as much as the society understands that there's a group out there to cause mayhem,
nobody wants to take that risk.
The more you give them all of this, it gives them some sense of. But when the focus should be on the people, and then encouraging them, ensuring them, giving them clear ideas on how you want to ensure the process, and making them feel a part of it. So I believe if people see much more of that, it will help to play down on this other aspect of what this group intends to do.
Well, that is it for now. Government must ensure that lives and properties in Anambra State are well secured before thinking of holding the governorship election in Anambra State, because no Nigerian will want to risk it, and the people of Anambra State will not want to risk it going out to vote, dodging bullets. Like the governorship candidates in Anambra State said they were campaigning dodging bullets. That is the much we can take for the big issue of the day. Join us same time tomorrow for another edition of this program. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship, and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.